Hi, everybody. Welcome to Shift Office Hours. It is Friday, May 22nd. It is a rainy day here in Pittsburgh. I don't know where you're tuning in from, but it's rainy here in Pittsburgh. But we are live today for 1 hour to answer whatever questions that you have.
It's been a weird month in marketing, but it's been a weird month in the world. Don't you think, Sarah?
Yes. It's been a weird couple months in the world, don't you think?
Yeah. Well, I guess it's been a weird year, 2020. I can see it clearly now. So anyway, thinking about this, just this week and the kind of questions that people are bringing to us, I think that the questions people are asking are not hugely different from what people ask all the time. Do you know what I mean? I think that we're seeing the same trends. In some cases, there's a few like, how do I deal with this situation, where that situation is something none of us has seen before. But a lot of the things people ask are, there's a tie back to things that we've always tried to figure out, like what is the best way to use a channel? Where do I need to focus my energy? Is there a best way to do something?
Yeah, I think we as marketers and you as maybe business owners or marketers yourselves, you need to be asking the same sorts of questions, which is what content is going to resonate with my audience. You can't just be putting stuff out there that doesn't make sense for who you're trying to reach. So you still need to be really tailoring what you're saying to your audience, and making sure that it not only tailored, but relevant for this moment. And I think that's where the time kind of comes into play.
Yeah. Is it the kind of question, one common question we get is like, is there a best time of day to advertise on Facebook? So what do you say? I know what I say, but what do you say when those kind of questions come up?
So specifically for paid campaigns on, let's say, Facebook, or, I think probably this rule, in my opinion, applies to any digital advertising, is to make sure that you are targeting the right audience for your product or for your service, and really understanding that audience. If you're targeting, moms, for example, when are moms mostly online? When do they have time to be online, to see your ad and take action and interact? So you really have to consider your audience, and when they're going to be most active. And then I think, because an ad is different from an organic post. An ad is interruptive and disruptive in many ways, whereas organic content is something that somebody has sought out. Mm-hmm. So really considering that audience and the best time of day for them, and then letting your data point you in the right direction. So maybe you've got your audience pretty much figured out, but the first maybe 2 weeks you run your ad campaign and don't put any parameters around date and time. So that means you're going to spend maybe a little bit of a bigger budget during that time frame, but you're learning and you're gathering so that you can optimize for the best time of day, which ads are working. Really gather that data at first with open parameters.
True.
What else?
The data sometimes can be surprising. Like I can remember a client that when we were working on a campaign that was targeting restaurant managers and restaurant business owners, basically, food service type people. Mm-hmm. And we were surprised at how a lot of the kind of click-throughs and the requests for information and so on happened at like 1 a.m. Yep. And then it was kind of like a duh moment, like, oh, that's when the shift ends and they've closed. And in particular, if they had like a really bad time with something, that's when they're a little bit enraged. And you think of them like in a calm manner, searching in the morning before they open up. But a lot of times, some of the emotion of like, this wasn't working, I need a fix right now, comes at in the middle of the night, 1 a.m., 2 a.m.
Yeah, odd times. That's another important thing too, is like just certain, if you're targeting an audience that has certain days off that are different from, like, I just going on the restaurant example, they're usually off on Mondays. And so maybe that's a day in which they have the time to dedicate to researching a thing, or they're looking to solve a pain point or a problem. So it's not just the best time of day, but also the best day of the week. Right. And you may not say, well, we want to advertise on all the days, but on the days that are most important, you might want to adjust your bid so that you're spending more of your money on Mondays, for example, if you're targeting the restaurant owner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's funny how, all the entrepreneurs and business owners I know, they work really hard. They've recognized their customer and they try to get to know them. But there can be these areas where maybe someone's got a blind spot and you're thinking that your customer is you, and you are not your customer. You are, you understand them really super well, but it's nice to have that kind of verification or ways to check that, confirm that your assumptions are in fact accurate.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Take yourself out of the situation. Very rarely are you the target audience. It's something we remind people about a lot, really, to even ourselves. We need to put ourselves in the shoes of the target audience in order to think like them and to be able to reach them and show them relevant things. We need to become them in a way, learn everything we can about them. And, because we want to be good advertisers, not bad advertisers. We want to do right by the target audience and give them, bring them products and services that they can actually use.
Right. And the day and reporting and checking, results and confirming your assumptions, all of those are good ways to do that. And I think too, testing, a thing that, that we use all the time. People may know the term A/B testing. Where you're testing option A and option B and seeing which one actually performs. Like so many of the tools we use these days just kind of make that easy. But it still requires like the thinking of setting up the test. So you're not like saying, okay, this person's going to look at this ad and version 1 of the ad looks like this and version 2 of the ad changes everything. Well, there's too many things changed there. Like maybe just test like one thing at a time. I'm thinking it's being smart and being patient.
Yeah. The idea of A/B testing is so important in what we do. I find it's a struggle to convince clients to, because you do have to invest a little bit more. It takes just enough time to get the one ad created, thinking about a whole nother experience to test out. But to your point, you might only be changing one thing, the color of a button, one word on the page, like those types of little things in a paid campaign. You'd be surprised, but they can make a really big difference. And I just need to share an anecdote, Cynthia, that one of our clients recently said, I'm going to pull a Cynthia right now, and I'm going to suggest that we A/B test a different URL, vanity URL in a postcard creative. And I was like, she would be very proud of you. I forgot to share that with you.
I have had an impact on this world. That is a thrilling moment for me.
Yes. So yeah, I think, the concept of doing it, and we could probably, fill a whole hour just talking about the right and wrong way to do A/B testing and when you should do it, and, how it can be effective in different types of campaigns. But it is a topic that is important. Maybe we should cover that on a video.
Yeah. So if you're listening and that seems like a thing that you're interested in, let us know. Let me take this minute also to say, if you have a question, you can jump in on the YouTube, and we've got a chat. I say that as though it's like a chat with quotation marks around it or something. But anyway, there's an online chat, and you can ask questions there. If you're feeling shy and you don't want to do that, you feel like that's too public, or you have like a long question you don't want to just put in a chat, you can send us an email at officehours@shiftcollaborative.com, or send them in through our Twitter, which I think is Twitter Shift USA, I think, right? At Shift USA. And yes. We're on Facebook and we're Instagram as well, any of those different ways. But if you have a question right now, pressing question, then put it in the chat. Oh, and I see a question coming up here.
Yeah, we have a question.
You want to read it there, Sarah?
I am reading it. I'll read it out loud and you listen to me reading it.
Okay.
We're super, super experienced. So the question, it comes from Monica, and she asks, I work with a lot of cities and counties. We rely on survey data to make good strategies. Any tips on inspiring people to participate or unique ways to reach an audience that is literally anybody? Those are two good questions. And I have some thoughts, but maybe Cynthia, you have some thoughts.
Well, I wanted to kind of reflect on the challenge here, because it is a really hard one, where you're asking people to go out of their way and do something for you. And you're trying to get a large group of people, a really disparate audience, a diverse audience to help. So it is a hurdle.
Yeah. So I can only go from some of the things that we've done with our clients. And in fact, we've worked with a couple of cities, counties, municipalities, or, groups that are trying to reach a very broad audience to do surveying. And some of the things that we've found to be effective are, one, let's say you're using a survey tool, an online survey tool where people are going to put their answers. That is a really wide way to reach people, but there are going to be folks, especially if you're targeting a very broad audience, that may not want to interact with an online survey. So having a variety of methods that someone can complete a survey. So a drop-off box. So we have done at community places, community centers, government offices, places where people go, maybe not right now, but let's pretend it's not a pandemic, where they have to go, libraries, the YMCA, those places, having a place where somebody fills out a paper survey, same survey that you have online, so that the data is consistent, but it's just a way to make sure that you're not, that you're reaching a broad audience. Another thing that we found to be effective is that we put a little advertising money behind the promotion of the survey. So just letting people know on your organic social media that you have a survey to complete is great, but boosting it, with a little bit of advertising dollars so that you can make sure you're reaching people beyond the current, the organic channel that you have. We've found that to be very effective, and it doesn't have to be, and we're not talking thousands of dollars here. We've done just $300 towards boosting a survey has gone a really long way. And so I would say those have been some effective tools for us. If it's a short survey, if it's only a couple of questions, doing live surveying, can sometimes be effective too. And then you're really making sure that you have gotten a lot of different types of people from many walks of life that way. What else?
What do you think about sort of length of survey, or how do you choose what's reasonable to ask in a survey? Certainly that's got to have an impact on actual completion rate.
Yes. Shorter surveys are going to be probably, you probably see a higher completion rate. Really questions that people can answer quickly without having to do a lot of thought. But if you have a lot of questions you need to get answered, then maybe what you need to do is give an incentive. So that's another thing that we have done with our surveys, to say, hey, we have a 10 question survey. It's probably going to take you about 10 minutes to complete. And we would really love you to complete it. If you do, you'll be entered to win a $50 Target gift card. We're going to be giving away 20 of these, or whatever it is. So, if you incentivize and motivate folks when it is a longer survey, you can get good response rates that way.
That's excellent. And so you're mentioning there too, the idea of reward and how much of a reward is reasonable, which I think is important for people too. But sometimes, depending on how you word the survey, there's this reward of doing good, or of offering help, which I think can be, people can feel good about that at times too.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that, if the audience that you're trying to reach is following you on social media, there's a reason they're following you there. They care about your organization, or, they like the content that you're already sharing. So when you put that survey out there, you're asking something of that audience that already kind of believes in your mission, perhaps. So it's not a huge ask, just put it out there. I think that they're going to want to your point, Cynthia, help.
Right. Another question coming in here. That was a great question, by the way.
Yes,
so
thank you.
appreciate that. Surveys are something where we're always looking for feedback, and there's a lot of different nuances depending on whether you know the audience, whether you don't, and how targeted it is. But just even really thinking about that as an option, I think is important. It's, again, like we're saying, get real data. Don't just go on your assumptions.
Yes.
Another question coming in here. Do we think that video ads or static ads work better on social? So when you think about static ads, like an image ad on a social network like Facebook or Instagram, or an ad with video. And so better, I guess better is a challenging term there.
Mm-hmm. So there's no right answer to this. I mean, I think that this person also says that specifically asking for a luxury automotive dealership. So I think that the answer to this question does vary based on what you're trying to advertise. So we have done a lot of consumer awareness campaigns so it's not a specific product per se, but more of like an education or an informative type of campaign. And we have found a single image ad in those instances has tended to perform the best. There's carousel. This is the other thing, depending on channel. Mm-hmm. So, a video ad might work really great in Facebook, but on LinkedIn, not so much. And so it really is going to depend on what you're advertising and where you're advertising it. But I will say that, video ads, or, even the slideshow ads that Facebook have, they, in this moment in time, they get good engagement. I won't say better than something else, but they get good engagement. Mm-hmm. And so I think if you've not been doing advertising for this brand yet, you might want to try a couple of different ad units first and see what is resonating with people the most. So do a carousel ad where you have multiple images, do a video ad, do a single image ad. It's not just the ad. Sometimes people do read the copy that goes with it. So it's copy and art working mm-hmm. together as well. So a lot of components to consider there.
And consider too that, right now we're live on YouTube. YouTube can be viewed a whole bunch of different ways. Many people view it more as a search engine than anything else. They think it's the place you go to get the how-to, or to find a recipe, or something, or to figure out how to fix your plumbing in the middle of the night. But other people, it is their major entertainment channel, and it is clearly a video channel. So there's a place on YouTube, particularly on mobile devices, for static image ads, and they can work super well because they work well in the way that YouTube has built their, for example, iPad and phone apps. But the video ads that lead in, lead out, or take a break in the middle, you can do so much fantastic targeting there, and you obviously have to be video. So it's a really powerful channel, if you will, and consider that among your social things, and think about the ways that you can have there be some echo of message across all your different channels. So as they're watching their YouTube videos, and then they're hopping over to Facebook to say hi to their grandmom or something, and then they see an echo of the message there. Like, that all can kind of work together.
Yeah, I think maybe building on that point too, is that you have to think about the channel. So you're trying to reach an audience. So the first thing you're always thinking of, where is my audience? They're in YouTube, they're in LinkedIn, wherever they are. You want to find them there, but then you also need to think about who's their audience as well. So in Facebook, audience is their family and their friends. And so they're sharing, stories and images, and it's a community feel. And so your ad, if you're advertising a luxury vehicle, it maybe needs to be more experiential and story based.
Mhm.
Whereas, in a different channel like YouTube, maybe, you're focused on, something specific about the features of the car.
Mhm.
And that might not play as well. Even if they're two video ads side by side, you have to consider the channel and what goes on in that channel and tailor to that. I think the other thing you can do too is test some of the, if you're kind of going around the writing room of your ads, coming up with different ideas, you could test some of those organically before you pay and put money behind them to see, are people more interested in this kind of post or that kind of post, and see what kind of engagement you get organically.
And so by organic, you're saying put some posts out there that you're not necessarily paying for, or you're only doing a small boost on?
Yeah, right. You're kind of testing the waters a little bit before you spend a ton of money on a campaign, just to see what's going to work,
Right. Let me also throw in one thing. So we're talking here mostly about like ads on social channels, but in addition, when you're thinking about your other online channels, let's say you've got an ad on some local newspaper or other publication that you're expecting people to be on. There's a thing in between static and video, and that is to do an ad that is using HTML5, which it just means it's sort of an advanced kind of digital ad where there can be some movement without it having to be full video. So your production costs are going to be different. You're still getting some kind of movement, and maybe you have the opportunity to throw in a little bit of wit or information or something in a way that you wouldn't otherwise. So it's not just sort of slides, but it's not just like one image, the next image, you can have like things like the car moving across the street, for example, maybe this way. You probably go right to left. So so you can do those things without having to necessarily go full video.
Right. Sorry.
Well, that's a really interesting question.
My screen froze and I wasn't quite sure what to do about it. And I thought maybe it was freezing for everybody. It was just me.
Okay. Well, then you missed all of my brilliance there, but fortunately it's been recorded for posterity. But anyway, that was a really interesting question about, static versus video and the other nuances of it. Of course, there's also the opportunity to mix in your own organic posts, which when I organically mean like ones that you don't have to pay for, you just have to create, but that then you could mix into those some GIFs or other kind of maybe movement, just kind of play with the different media and see what you get. We've lately been exploring a little bit of some things in After Effects, Adobe After Effects, which is a way of doing animation, and playing with that and thinking about how that's going to integrate into a brand where we're getting, again, this little bit of a sense of movement without necessarily having to commit to a full, what we might think of as the real fancy high-powered animation that, cartoons and we're obviously no Pixar here, so but there's a lot of interesting technology that's available.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, not only is there a lot of technology and different tools you can do to produce video these days, but I think the barrier of production is a lot different in today's world than, prior to COVID. And I think that audiences are a little bit more forgiving and also maybe like less polished video. It's quirky or it's homespun or it's, it's just sort of a little bit more relatable and connects on a different level. So I would encourage, any company to try to utilize video these days and not let the polish or refinement of a video stop you. Just to kind of try a tool out and see if it works for you and get some video content out there, because I think that it is, whether it's a paid ad or a social piece of content, video is a really good way to engage and connect with people.
Yep. And I mean, I think, for example, just today, we're not shy about saying their video froze, and we're not overly complicating the technology here. I had my name wrong at the beginning of the video.
I know, I'm sorry. I wanted to tell you that so badly, but I was like, she'll figure it out.
I did, but that's because we're purposely, letting ourselves be a little bit more flexible here. It's part of our brand, really, is the fact that we are where, we collaborate, we work together, and we are able to kind of fly by the seat of our pants when necessary, or figure it out anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
Living the brand.
Yes. Cool. Well, so just a reminder to anybody that's joined us mid live stream, you can chat your questions right into the YouTube chat tool, or if you would rather not put your question out there in front of everybody, you can email us at officehours@shiftcollaborative.com. I think we probably have that in the description, perhaps. If you want to copy and paste it, send us an email. We're happy to answer any questions that you have today or any day.
That's right. And we also have been making videos. I'm going to actually, I don't think it's in the description. I'm going to type it here in the chat. We have also started making a couple of videos that are a little bit more structured, where we have kind of a topic that we're going back and forth on. Where we really kind of dive deeper on a topic. So if any of the things we're talking about here, you're thinking you'd like to know a little bit more about, or if you've got something else that you'd really like a little bit deeper dive, maybe some interactive demos or something like that, we're looking for ideas. So we'd love to know what would interest you and what would be valuable.
Yep, we want to hear from you.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we have been talking about, and I think more so with some of your clients, Cynthia, is we have a couple of clients that do business globally.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you may have heard of this GDPR thing, and you might not know what that is or if it applies to you and your business. Cynthia, why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
Let me start by saying what GDPR is.
Right.
So GDPR is, it stands for General Data Protection Regulations. And this is something that's come out of the EU, where the nations in the EU are pushing harder perhaps than the US and some other countries on how individuals' data is kept by companies. And so basically the short version is that it's a way for countries to limit how much data companies save about people without their knowledge. They want you to know very transparently what data is being collected about you, how it could be used, and what you can do about it in terms of can you tell them not to? Can you make them delete your data? What's going to happen? So GDPR compliance, it matters, really most online, because as I think people are generally a little bit savvy on now, but maybe not to the full extent. When you visit websites, those websites can put files, which people call cookies, on your web browser. And then other websites, when you visit them, they'll check and see, oh, hey, here's a cookie that I'm allowed to have the data of. And so anyway, they find out a lot about you and they save all this data. And the EU feels that maybe that's not great. And so they've made this requirement that if you're doing business online in Europe, if you're selling to or marketing to customers in the EU, then you need to disclose very fully what kind of data you're collecting about those people when they're on your website. And you have to give them a way to not have their data collected. And so this all took effect, I think it was a year or two ago. And that's when you probably noticed all the people, all the different websites, when you go to them, all of a sudden you had to click accept every time, or there was this great big block. So if you're not doing business with the EU, with people in the EU, you probably think, well, it's no big deal, but you actually might be. You might be targeting people who live overseas or so on. And so you do need to think about it a little bit. What kind of things have you heard people ask about it so far, Sarah? Anything at all? Do you have any clients that are asking about it yet?
I just have one client that, when the regulations came out, had to, get compliant pretty fast. And so, we put some things up on their website to comply with all of the regulations. And, I think that really just part of any kind of major regulation that comes out that impacts your industry, you have to do your homework on it, get up to speed, work with a professional to figure out how to implement it, in the channels where it needs to be implemented, your website and, advertising and so forth. So I think that that's how we have tended to support our clients is, helping them with that research and figuring out what sorts of things they need to do and say for their, industry.
Sure. There are a lot of tools that help this now, and there's whole companies that provide sort of a combination legal and technical service to make sure that you're compliant. They'll do a little audit of your site and take a look at all the cookies. Sometimes website owners are surprised. They didn't think they were collecting any data. And then when you take a look, you realize, geez, just the way my website is built, just to make it work properly, like for people to express some kind of preference, requires these things, these cookies that are, again, they're just little files. They'll have a name, they'll have a little bit of data in them that's like, you might have your name, for example, or your status of whether you're logged in or not. There's a lot of things that just seem like they're very simple things. You don't think of it as like your data, but it is effectively it's your data, and it's also keeping track of a thing called an IP address, an Internet Protocol address, which is where you physically, what computer you were logged into when you logged in. So a lot of times that'll just say, well, I was in this city, but maybe you didn't know that people were keeping track of what city you were in. How many different devices you logged in with. Maybe sometimes you're using your phone, sometimes your laptop, sometimes your work computer. So all of those things are among the data that the EU is concerned about, and that increasingly government agencies here in the US are concerned with. I think California is probably going to lead the way for the US. So it's kind of good for us to be watching the stuff that's going on in the EU and understanding what it's taken to be compliant over there, so that we can make sure we're doing the same over here.
Yeah, getting ahead of it in a way.
But it is, so people don't panic. It's not like, oh my God, this is not a year 2K level problem. Oftentimes there'll be, if you're using a content management system, if your website's in something like a WordPress, there'll be like a plugin or something that you can use that you need to do the setup of it right, but it'll take care of all of the messaging and things. If you set it up right, it'll take care of that whole accept, not accept thing. And then some of these services that you can subscribe to, maybe $10 a month or something, which, if it helps you avoid a lawsuit or a fine, it's worthwhile. Wow. They will help you then let people say, it's okay to track what I do on the website, but I don't want you to advertise to me. So you can have, so the people visiting your site can have some choice, greater level of control. And we're finding that some business owners, they're concerned about, or their employees, their in-house team is concerned about privacy too. And so it's not like saying we're all being pushed away as marketers. We're not like these terrible people, but we do want to respect people's interests and needs. So the tools are out there, and we can, again, if you're looking for some good resources on that, there's a website, GDPR.eu. Which is a really nice, it has some very nice, understandable explanations of what this is about, and gives you some starting points for how to make sure you're compliant.
How about we put that in the chat?
Okay, I'll put it there.
I just did.
Oh, you win.
Beat you.
So fast.
Sorry.
Like lightning. Yeah, so we think of ourselves as, Pittsburghers here, because we are, and yet we are citizens of the world in a way.
Yes, we have to be good ones.
Yes.
It is 143 Day. You know what that is?
So that's a Pittsburgh thing.
It is, but it's sort of a world thing. It could be a world thing. Do you know what that is?
1, 4, and 3, those numbers all, to me as a numbers person, like 1 and 3 makes 4, but I happen to know that that's not what it is.
Right.
143 is a number that I believe Fred Rogers felt was a sort of a significant number in life.
Right. Because it's a numeric way of saying I love you. There's one letter in I and 4 in love and 3 in you. So today is the 143rd day of this year. And so this is the day that we celebrate 143. I think it's trending globally on Twitter as a hashtag. I think.
Hashtag 143 day or?
So, yeah, I think hashtag 143 day. I think. It may be just trending in Pittsburgh. I don't know. I could be wrong about this.
Well, I know one other fact about Fred Rogers and 143, and I know this from the New Yorker, not New Yorker, but whatever profile it was that ended up being turned into that movie with Tom Hanks. And that is that Mr. Rogers kept his weight at 143 pounds.
Right.
Which I think is impressive.
That is impressive. How tall is he, or was he?
I don't know.
Because that would be an impressive weight if you were really tall.
Yeah,
you're like
he didn't look super skinny. But a little.
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting fact.
The fact that someone could be so steady on it, I think, is a fine thing.
Yeah, I wonder what he ate. I want to be on his diet.
He swam every day too, I think.
Yeah, fascinating person.
143. But then another thing that today is you're wearing, if I'm not mistaken, a band T-shirt.
I am.
And why is
that? Because YEP is doing something today to celebrate bands, and fans can share their favorite band T-shirt on social media. I don't really know actually a lot about it.
Why did you pick a Nirvana T-shirt?
Because it was one of my I grew up in the 90s, coming of age in the 90s, and it was one of my favorite songs. And I think one of my proudest parent moments, this is certainly not the only one, but one of them is my 11-year-old son, when he was like 8, one of his favorite songs was Smells Like Teen Spirit. And I was like, and I didn't play it for him. I don't know where that came from, but I was like, okay, you have good taste, because that's a band I like.
It's a great song. It's a great song.
It is. I also had the deodorant. It was a thing in the 90s. I mean,
very good. Well, that is some, I don't know, somehow I think let's turn it back to branding with that, because that is amazing.
Yeah, it's an interesting co-brand. Another interesting co-brand, I ventured out to the State store yesterday, and I noticed that there was, I just was kind of browsing the bottles, and you're not allowed to touch them unless you're going to buy them. So, I'm kind of really paying attention to what they say, what the labels say. And Spotify, and I believe it was the wine brand Frontera, I don't know, I don't buy that, had a Spotify QR code essentially that you could scan. And I assume, I couldn't read more about it, that you could, this wine bottle came with a playlist essentially. So
okay.
Is what I'm assuming. And so is an interesting co-brand cross promotion thing there.
Yeah. Huh.
You see a lot with movies, obviously, but that was interesting.
Right. By the way, one of the elves behind the scenes let us know that what today is wear your music T-shirt to work day. Right. So, thank you, elf.
And also, fun fact, Anthony says, Kurt Cobain didn't know about the deodorant before the song became a hit, according to Kathleen Hanna's biopic. So
that's
anyway.
But, okay.
Yeah, I don't know about the timing there.
Well, that's fine. All right. Some other things that let's get back to the marketing in and answering questions. By the way, if you're just tuning in now, if you've come in late, thank you very much for joining us. And this is Shift Office Hours, and we're answering different questions that people have had during the week that various clients and friends have come to us with, and also any questions that you have. So if you've got a question, jump on into chat and tell us what it is. If you're feeling shy and you'd rather email it, you can email it to officehours@shiftcollaborative.com. That link is in the chat somewhere. And you can catch us on our different social media channels, and one of our faithful team members will no doubt spot it and let us know. You may also want to let us know any questions or ideas you have for a deeper dive or a longer video, because we're making some of those right now as well. Something if you want to maybe have us demonstrate something online or talk in more detail, give more examples. We're all happy to do all those things. So let us know what's interesting and valuable to you.
Absolutely. So a question that came up today, actually, I'm just dropping this right in your lap, is how two questions, two-part question. One, should you use emojis in your social, as a business, as an organization, should you use emojis in your social media posts and responses to comments? Like, you know, should you have 4 hearts as a reply to somebody or whatnot? So that's one question. And then sort of related was, how many hashtags are too many hashtags? You know, are we becoming spammy if we have too many? And obviously some of these answers vary by the social media channel that we're playing in, because they each have their own way of operating. Mm-hmm. But the first one, emojis. What are your thoughts about a brand or an organization using emojis and emojis in general as a way of communicating today?
I think emojis to me are terribly interesting. They come, I think, in part from the emoticons of the, you know, a much earlier tradition in digital communication. Emoticons being those things where you maybe would have a semicolon and a parentheses to make a wink, smiling wink, or a colon and a capital D to make a great big grin. They're always these sideways things. Created, if I'm not mistaken, by someone from Carnegie Mellon, but I'm sure someone in the chat can correct us if that was wrong. But anyway, but they also come from Asia, where graphical symbols are and keyboard opportunities are much more complex, and almost maybe a little bit of an anime tradition and so on. So all of that by way of saying, I find them fun and confusing. Like each of them has the opportunity to say much more than just text can do, in the same way that even an emoticon can say more than just text can, to add in that little bit of spice or sarcasm or laugh or whatever it may be. But what I also worry about is that they gain meaning with use. And sometimes I worry that it's kind of like gang signs. Like I'm worried that if I tried to do like a sign, I would end up insulting someone or saying what I didn't mean, or like, you know, getting a tattoo in Chinese. Like, well, I actually know what it means. What if I get something dumb, you know? So I'm drawn to them, and I have a fear of them. How about you?
They're fascinating. I think they're fascinating in the way that they have evolved how we communicate with each other. But they, you know, you can offend somebody with your actual words just like you can with an emoji, right? Like it has the same opportunity to be misconstrued. Being clear and concise in the way that you're communicating is something that we, you know, really as a practice every single day with ourselves and with our clients. And so then you throw in the, you know, emoji wrench, and how do you use it? How do you not use it? And I think much like anything, if you are a brand or an organization, having social media guidelines of here's when our brand uses emojis. Here are the emojis that we use. Here are the emojis we don't use. Here's how, you know, how we interact and how we're going to use them at our organization. Having some rules and some guidelines can help, you know, make sure that things don't go wrong.
Right. I think they're still being used only very gently in email subject lines, for example. I can anticipate a time when they're going to get picked up and used an awful lot, and then they will lose some of their impact just from overuse. And then we'll scale back again. But But for now, thinking about why you're using them, making sure that they fit your tone and they fit in with your message, and just checking that you're not saying something that you didn't mean to say. All of those are the smart things. Ask the young person on your team what are the cool kids, how are the cool kids reading it these days?
Yeah. And I think that emojis are potentially impacting, the algorithms that are used in social media channels, like whether or not your post gets some more attention. So to your point about using them in subject lines, I think one of the reasons they're used there is because that looks different than other emails that you're getting. And we're getting so many emails all the time today that if that's a way that your subject line can stand out, then so be it. And the same thing in social media channels. It's a way for a post to get a little bit more visibility. It makes it a little different than the others.
It's all part of this sort of moving target, staying current with what the current trends are. A lot of the mass email systems now will make recommendations for you on how best to craft a subject line, for example. And they'll include tips, like you can include emojis and not too many. Some of them will even kind of flag you or suggest that you not do that. The same way that they tell you, hey, 200 characters is too many characters for your subject line. It's probably not going to perform as well.
Yeah.
But you can always test. I think maybe that should be the title of today's today's thing. Test.
Yes. That's a good mantra.
It is our mantra.
Okay, so that's emojis. I asked a pretty loaded question. And then the second part of my question was hashtags. And so hashtags are super useful things. We can talk a little bit maybe about how they started with Twitter and how they've evolved. And then, some of the best practices around them, perhaps. How did they start?
How did hashtags start? Hashtags came out of, as I understand the history of it, they came out of Twitter originally, where people, you remember in the olden days of just a couple of years ago when we only had 120 characters in a Twitter message, which itself came from an even older thing, which is that's how long you could have a sentence, basically, or have a message with some caveats in text messages on cell phones. So the older technologies are constantly with us even today. But so hashtags came from people wanting to create searchable keywords to kind of tag their tweets and help people find them in a theme. So they didn't, at the time, they weren't themselves kind of links automatically. It was literally just like you were putting a number sign in front of a word, and therefore if other people search for that, other people weren't putting number signs in front of words because that wasn't a thing at the time. So you had a better chance of finding all the things that matched that. And it didn't take too long for Twitter itself to notice that people were doing that, and then to decide to adopt that as an official part of their technology, and then to put in some of the infrastructure so that it automatically turned into a link, just the way a web address does. And that when you click that link, it links to the search itself. So it was part of, you can almost call it like a grassroots movement from the users pushing through this technology.
Yeah, I think the other effective use still today of the hashtag is if you're at an event, a large event with a lot of people, it's a way for you to kind of talk to other attendees of that event on that hashtag. And you might not meet up with them in real person, even though you're both physically at this event. And it's a way to kind of capture the experience that the attendees are having at the event. And so I think it can be really useful. And I remember when, the hashtag first started being a thing, you would go to an event and they'd have a Twitter wall, and it would be the live feed, like huge, like up on the wall, and you could see people interacting. And it's just so fascinating and so interesting to think about the way that people integrated the real life experience into using hashtags.
And it's interesting how it then jumped from one channel to another. I think it first jumped from Twitter to Facebook, possibly also too, there were other networks around then. Plurk was one that I remember using. We had a bunch of us here in Pittsburgh that were using. And then, in Instagram and so on from there. So a smart idea easily gets borrowed by other channels, or is taken over by the people to the other channel and kind of, forced it into.
Mm-hmm. So the specific question that we got from our client was around how many hashtags is too many to use. And it varies by channel. I think that, you want to kind of check in and do a little research because it changes. I don't want to say the wrong thing here because it could have changed last night, but speaking of sort of just looking at Instagram, you can use, I believe, up to 30. That's your limit of how many you can use. But should you use all 30, or is a 5 to 6 a good range? I think there was a study that came out that said 11 is the perfect number. Again, let's go back to the theme of the day, which is test. If you get great engagement using 30 hashtags and you have, maybe you have 10 to 12 consistent hashtags that you're using on all of your posts because that's part of your, channel strategy. Great. If you're getting good engagement and it's not turning people away and isn't feeling spammy to your audience, then keep doing you, for sure. But I think you need to probably maybe test a few posts. Here's what happens when I test a post with one hashtag. Here's what happens when I post something that has 17 and kind of so on and so forth, and look at your engagement rates.
Mm-hmm. I think, again, this is where, you talked about people using, events using hashtags as a way of helping people at the event find each other. Brands are often using it as a way of being found by people outside of their network. So they're trying to get even beyond their current network and the sharing that their own network might do to catch people who have similar themes and so on. So it makes me think in a little way of how when in the early rough and ready days of search engines, people would hide keywords of frequently searched terms in their pages in the hope that people would find them, but they were the wrong people. So the typical example is, and this will tell you how long ago this was, Britney Spears. You would put and I none of my clients would have ever done this. We would never have done this, but people would do this, where you would take the name Britney Spears and put it somewhere on your web page, and have the font color be the same color as the background of the page, so you couldn't see it. So the
white on white,
her name was technically there on the page, and maybe a whole bunch of other terms, but the people visiting the page legitimately wouldn't find it, and clearly trying to undermine what the spirit of doing search engines and things. But also you're bringing people to your website who have no interest in your website. They're looking for news about Britney Spears. so that's what I'm saying. So, and I tie that back to today. Don't use hashtags that don't matter to, that matter to people who don't care about you, or who are never going to care about you, and who you don't care about.
Right. Exactly. It's don't use such a broad hashtag that doesn't mean anything, just to get attention, because it might not be the attention of the right people. It's that exact Britney Spears example was used on my client. I think you and Anthony must have talked. Is that because he gave that example too, and I forgot all about it. But yeah, it goes back to, I think, having a good content strategy for your website, whether it's, if you have a blog or you have some sort of article section, you really want to be thinking, are the keywords that I'm utilizing in this blog post, for example, the right ones that are going to pull in qualified traffic for me. So we have a client that writes a lot of interesting blog posts on highly searched topics that are somewhat related to the work that they do, but it brings in a lot of traffic for people that are just interested in that content and not in the services that they provide. Mm-hmm. But they keep doing that because for the qualified traffic, it demonstrates their knowledge of in this case, different cultures. So you just have to think through, and it's something that when we're looking at the analytics for that client, we know they're getting really great traffic to their blog because they're highly searched topics, but a small portion of those people actually are qualified for that business. And so that's just a known factor for that client.
A similar thing happens with another couple of clients that we've got for different reasons. One of them because they're writing, like technical support or help posts, which can be very broadly helpful. But then that can have a long-term effect for you that maybe somebody remembers, oh, this company was providing really great online technical support and I'm frustrated with my current provider. Maybe I should be going over to those folks too. So hopefully, even if it's maybe not going to pay off now, it can have a long-term effect, as well as positioning you as like a real useful authority on a particular topic.
Yeah, right, exactly. So we jumped around from emojis to hashtags to smells like Teen Spirit and Mr. Rogers' weight. We covered a lot of different things today.
And
GDPR.
Years, right.
Who knew we could cover so many different things in 1 hour? But we did, and we only have about 5 minutes left. Mm-hmm. So if you're just joining or you've been on and you haven't gotten your question in, now is the time to do that. As we've mentioned a few times, you can chat it or you can send it to officehours@shiftcollaborative.com.
Just for our lightning round, we'll answer with 1 minute, or we will, or help us think about what would be useful for us to share or post about or write about on our blog. We have a whole bunch of different channels, of course, just like all the rest of the people, but we're trying to use ours in smart new ways. So we'd love to know what would be useful to you. How can we really be helpful online?
Yeah. Can I tease an upcoming video topic?
Oh, yes. Do it.
Okay. So one of the things that we help our clients with is SEO. And then inside of SEO, specifically local SEO.
For people who don't know, what is SEO?
SEO stands for search engine optimization, and it is basically the way in which Google determines how to rank different pages on your website using different factors that they're looking at. And so if the user types in a search query, Google and Bing and all the other smaller search engines want to return the most relevant content for that search query. So you're really optimizing all of your content around, those focus keywords that someone is going to search to get to a particular page in your site. But local SEO, one of the factors of that is that your business name and your business address and your phone number and your website are in a lot of profiles across the web. They might be in profiles for your social media. They might be in directories like Yelp or business directories. And one of those things is Google. And Google My Business, you have a business listing. And so it's really important to have consistency across all of those profiles. And when I say consistency, I mean that if you have a suite number on your address, if you spell it out in one place, but you abbreviate suite STE in another, that's not consistent, and that can impact your SEO, local SEO, believe it or not. So consistency in what's called NAP, name, address, phone, is really important. And then Google My Listing or Google My Business is something, your business listing is something that we help clients with. And so we're going to focus an upcoming video on how to claim your business listing, take control of it, and not only take control of it and claim it, but do something with it. And so we're going to demonstrate that. Yes.
Yeah, it's a great, really free to use resource. Obviously, they'll also offer you ways to pay money on it as well, but Google and Bing and the other places that have map-based directories all offer you different ways to show up better when people look for an address online or look for a route online or on a mobile app. So you need to take control of that. And we are going to show you how in an upcoming video.
Yay.
Yay.
And I think we're pretty much at time. There might be a few seconds left. Any parting words?
Parting words. Well, it's Memorial Day weekend
Mhm.
here in the United States, and I think in these challenging times, it's maybe nice to think about Mr. Rogers and his 143 as a way of connecting, even when we maybe can't do all the fun outdoor getting together things that we wish we could.
And if you have Monday off, hopefully you do, but if you do, just rest and relax. Don't do work. That's
Right.
my advice.
You can watch our videos. That's not necessarily.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Watch our videos. Join us next Friday, and just have a great Memorial Day weekend, everybody.
Bye now.